Watch this.
Wake up to reality.
All right, welcome to another episode of Reality Tonic. I'm your host, Spencer, alongside with the world-famous co-host, Rob. Rob, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Rob, very, very special guest here today. As you know, our podcast has gone global, right? We're interviewing people in the UK, Australia. We've tapped into the music scene before. We haven't tapped into the metal music scene, and we have a very special guest who, although resides in the States, he has traveled, I think it's safe to say, all around the world. Please welcome the lead singer from the metal band Unearth. This is Trevor Phipps. Trevor, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Trevor, it is odd how you and I know each other. So I am a fan of metal music. I can't honestly say that I've listened to a whole bunch of Unearth stuff, but I definitely see the name. Rob and I are Worcester Palladium guys. We were growing up, and I've definitely seen that name on there plenty of times.
Right.
So when I'm talking to your wife, our kids actually go to school together. So I'm talking to your wife, and she's saying, "What do you do? What's your wife do?" And I'm like, "What's your husband do?" She says, "Oh, he's a musician." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. What's he play? What's his thing?" And she says, "Oh, he's in a band." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I play the drums." And she's like, "Well, they're actually, like what kind of music do you play?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I don't know her, right? So I'm like, "Oh, I do like, some like metal stuff." She's like, "Oh, you can do like the double bass and all that." I'm like, I know I'm like dipping into a territory now. And I just completely came clean and told her how basic I was. And I'm happy I did, because after I listened to your stuff, I realized I am completely garbage as a musician. The drumming in your tracks are unbelievable. So kudos to you.
But that's how drummers, man. It's just like Spinal Tap says, man.
Right? Spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, seriously.
That's the fate of them all.
So we do kind of know each other, right? You were nice enough to come on this podcast, and I'm finally happy to talk to you. And one of the reasons why I think this will be a really good interview is, yes, you are in the music scene, and you tour all over the world, and you've been doing this for a long time, but you're also just a regular guy when you come back home. Like, you're dropping your kid off at school, you're going to these, activities and stuff, and you live in a nice, quiet neighborhood. It's certainly different from the rock star lifestyle that we see and that we watch and stuff like that. So that's what I think is fascinating. So that was a little bit about you for the audience. Now, why don't you share with us anything I didn't touch on? What is exactly you do? Tell us about your band and all that good stuff.
All right. I've been singing for this band since 1998. We formed when a few of us were in college. North Shore, Massachusetts-based band, and we were in bands that were friends before that, so we already knew each other. So I've known these guys for close to 30 years. We formed this band in 98. We wanted to just try something different, and then it just kind of took off from there. Our former guitar player, it's complicated. We decided to finish school in 2001. We graduated from college. Like, hey, let's get this one calendar year before we try to get, desk jobs or whatever. And the first year was good enough to extend it one more year. And that second year was good enough to extend it the third year. And that third year, we get signed to a big label, Metal Blade Records. And then ever since then, we've been an international band. And we've been on six continents. And for a while, for about 6-7 years, we were touring about 9 months a year. It was our full-time gig. Still call ourselves a full-time band, but it's not to that level. At that time, we were in our 20s, so you're going at it pretty hard. And then around 2009, our guitarist Buzz had a daughter. And then 2013, I had my daughter. And so we've kind of intentionally slowed it to a point where we don't tour as much as we used to raise a family, to raise families, but we still tour enough to be considered full time. But the 9 months a year thing is currently on pause until kids get older, or maybe forever on pause to kind of live two different lifestyles.
No, I hear you.
Wow.
You're certainly living dual lifestyles there. So, how old were you when you first started the band again?
The band started in '98, so I had just turned 21.
21. So here we are. Now it's 2022. You get a couple kids, you get the house, you have the whole thing. At what point when you were doing this, when you're starting off, did you realize like, oh man, we kind of got something going on here. Like we have a fan base, and I know the internet wasn't really booming at that point, so you can't really see in live real time how successful you're becoming. At what point in time did you realize, oh man, we definitely have a fan base?
There's been different points of that throughout our career, but it was early 2001. So we did our first tour. It was like a 10-day tour. We just did regional stuff from '98 till 98 through 2000. Just like New England weekends, maybe New York, Montreal that we played once. But then we did an East Coast tour January 2001. It was pretty good, nothing crazy. But the record came out. Our first full length came out on Eulogy Recordings at the end of January 2001, and then we did a couple weekends here and there. Nothing really seemed to pop off. We was like, okay, whatever. This is just going to be what it is. And we did our first. We did a metal fest at the Palladium. We played upstairs, and that was in April or early May of 2001. And everyone knew the words, and it was probably our best show to that point in our career. It was just complete mayhem. Then we left for a tour less than a month later, our first U.S. tour. This band Brothers Keeper took us out, and the first show was in Omaha, Nebraska, and 250 were there. We thought it was gonna be a medium show, whatever, but everyone knew the words. The whole crowd was stage diving, singing along, and they were screaming the words back at us, and we couldn't believe it. Like, all right, something's happening here. That tour was great. And then a month later, we played this festival called Hellfest, which is in Syracuse, New York, back in the day. And we had a great slot late in the day, and thousands of people there. And hundreds of those thousands knew all the words. And the pit was insane. And we're like, all right, well, this is monumental. Something has clicked with this fan base. They like what we're doing. And so that's when we really were like, all right, we're going to pursue this full time and just really see what it can bring us. And that was really the first time. So that period of 3 months, May through July of 2001, was really an eye opener. Like, all right, well, what we're doing is translating, so let's really go after it. Throughout our career, we had different points where things, hit jumps like that. That was, I think, the main point.
When you first got signed to a label, was that like an amazing deal for you guys? Was it a crappy deal? Walk us through that a little bit during that time.
So the first one we got signed to, so like I said, we formed in '98. It was July of '98. First show was September. We recorded a demo tape. It was, I think, around Halloween of 2001. And we put it out just on a tape. We made 300 copies. And I think we did our tape, our cassette release show at the Gloucester Art Space. I'm not sure if you guys ever went there. It was a 60-cap room in Gloucester, Mass. It was an actual art space that had a small, it wasn't even a stage. It was a room you could play gigs in. And we sold all those tapes and pretty quickly. And shortly after that, this record label from Connecticut reached out. They wanted to release it as an EP. And so there's no money. They were like, hey, give us that recording. We'll put it on CD and put it out there. It'll be in stores. It'll be part of distribution. So that was a cool thing. It was like, all right, well, cool. People care enough that they're going to put our music out on CD format and give it to the masses. So that was very, very small level. Fast forward about a year, and we got signed to Eulogy Recordings, who did our first full length. And that was a big deal for us. It was actually a real contract, had to show it to a lawyer. And it was a real deal. Like, Eulogy was an indie label, a small indie, but they were important in the metal and hardcore scene at the time. And so that was a big deal to us. And then fast forward 3 years after that, that's when the real contracts came. That was the life-changing ones, when we had offers from a bunch of different big players in metal. but the one that gave us not even the best financial offer, but the one that gave us the most confidence with our offer was Metal Blade Records, and we chose them, and that was in the fall of 2003, and we recorded shortly after and put out our full length, The Oncoming Storm, 2004, and that was really kind of the record that helped us become kind of a mainstay, at least a long-term stay in this world of metal and hardcore.
That's a pretty short amount of time. That's not that long of a time at all to go from I'm going to start it off to all right, now we're getting some notoriety, and now we have a record label, and it's like a real deal. So kudos to you.
It was a pretty. It wasn't like an overnight thing, but it was a pretty steep incline. Like we just were popping off pretty quick, and we saw the results very quickly. So we did a demo that turned into an EP, full length, and then a year after a full length, I left this out. We did an EP, and that's really what kind of pushed it even further. Was that EP really helped keep people to know that the show that we were active, we're always writing new music and always touring, and I really think that was important at that time.
Cool.
That's awesome. I was just curious, do you write the lyrics for the songs?
I do. I write all the lyrics. I've had a couple of songs in our catalog where so I always leave the door open, and I always ask the players in the band, can you guys write some lyrics? It shouldn't be all on me.
Yeah.
I want you guys, your voices to be heard too, and no one ever really pitches in. But there's a few songs in our catalog where guys didn't pitch in, so I was happy for that, to have that collaboration.
If you're on stage, and you said 100,000 people are, singing the lyrics right back to you, like what is that sort of experience like? We're just normal people. I just think of that as being crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
It is. I mean, I used to say that was the best feeling ever in the world, to have people shout back your words and have a great show, right? And then I had kids, and that's literally the best feeling. And it completely destroys it, but still, you have to separate it. As far as performing, like anything else in my life, that has been the most rewarding part of my life, was playing a show where you feel that people are getting what you're doing, and they appreciate it, and they're feeling that emotion with you, and it's a very enjoyable thing. That's why you see musicians not ever want to stop, because it's really it's a great feeling to have that between you and the crowd.
Lucky we close our eyes with the walls around us. We have to reach.
Well, I couldn't imagine, people just chanting back stuff I wrote down. Just that many people too. It's like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Like we just played a show in Birmingham like 2 weeks ago. Show was killer. I got that kind of adrenaline rush that goes through your whole body when the crowd's flipping out, and you feel that energy. And then in Europe, when we did all the festivals this summer in August, we were there for 3 weeks, and I would get that almost daily. And it's kind of like a drug,
Yeah, I bet.
Feeling a high from this energy between people and the music, and it's a very exciting thing.
Yeah, and you got to kind of wait though. You know what I mean? Like you have your fix at 8 p.m. tonight when you're on stage or whatever time they tell you to go on stage. That's when you got to get your fix. But throughout the rest of the day, I'm sure, let's put the kids and the wife and the family aside for a second. When you were doing your thing, when you guys were first starting out and you're playing these shows, there is a lot of downtime between, like if you're doing a festival and stuff like that, you're kind of just chilling, right?
There's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of travel too. So because we don't tour as much, we make the effort to do a van. So back in the day, we do the tour bus, and we'll still do a tour bus when the tour makes the most sense to take a bus. Like 2018, we did the Warped Tour, which was almost 2 months. So of course you're gonna be in a bus. It's in the hot parking lots, all day long. So you have to take a bus. But club tours, festival tours, when you travel a lot, you take a Sprinter van. So you're constantly traveling. A lot of the shows are between 8 and 12 hours apart. We had one show this summer where we played on the west of Belgium, and we played on the east of the Czech Republic, and that was about a 14-hour drive. And so we basically we got off stage at 4:20 p.m. in Belgium, went back to the dressing room, got in the dry clothes, got in the van, and drove overnight to Czech Republic, and then basically loaded in, changed back into the same shitty wet clothes, it's their stage clothes, and then played the show. And I had sprained my foot at the time, so there's some extra hurdles for me physically. But those are just some of the challenges that happen. Like you'll get hurt on the road, but you have to still perform. You can't just not play. And so, yeah, it's a lot of downtime, and you get really tired. The summer we had 3 fly dates in a row. So every day we had like 4 a.m. lobby call at the hotel, and we basically get less than 2 hours of sleep a night for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And when you're in your 40s, that it wears on you. But at the same time, you have it like an extra gear, just like when you're a parent and your kids are born. You'd think leading up to that time, you're tired. Oh man, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. I'm tired. Then you have a baby, and you literally get maybe an hour, right? But you are okay. There's that extra gear the human body has. So for a short tour, 3.5 weeks, it's kind of a similar feeling where you use that extra gear. And then my wife Christy will tell you, I'll get home from tour and I'll be really tired for 3 or 4 days after. I just want to lay down and sleep. It's almost your body has to catch up on that those sleep reserves that you stole for the tour.
Do you think
Go ahead, Rob, I'm sorry.
having that energy from the crowd and stuff, if you play a show, and like you said, it's like a drug, that like after you get off stage, it's like can't just go to bed, like I imagine that you've got to have this like this energy.
Well, you don't go to bed, because then you hang out with your friends. Your bandmates and your crew are your friends, and you're living these experiences with them on the road, and they become part of like your extended family. It's funny, my son Brody he loves Buzz, our guitar player. He always looks at pictures and video. There's one time, well, just before the pandemic, Brody was maybe he wasn't even quite 2 yet, but he heard Buzz was here. Buzz came over, and he was so psyched. He was walking down the stairs, but he thought it was Buzz Lightyear.
Oh.
And so he saw Buzz, and he was so polite about it. It's little toddler. It's like, oh. I'm like, what's the matter? It's like, I was Buzz Lightyear. And Buzz says, "Oh, so sorry to disappoint."
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
funny.
He loves Buzz. That was just a mistake
So
of identity.
who sends you guys to Belgium and all of those things? Like, when did you guys start going, hey, we need to go to Romania and stuff like that? Walk us through that when you realized because again, everything's still kind of early, like in the times and stuff where you're kind of getting big. When did you realize you were like a global act?
So the first like bigger label we were signed to, Eulogy Recordings in 2001. They had a European partner that they would pick certain releases that they would distribute for each other or press overseas for each other, and use a distribution in each territory, kind of like a trade. And the record label over there was called Alvaran Records. And so Eulogy did a record for, I want to say Born from Pain, maybe. And so that was on Alvaran, a band from Germany. And then, so Alvaran did the Unearth record. And so then we got a tour, and it was the spring of 2002 by a booking agent called MAD out of Germany. They brought us over. We did a 3-week tour. We were support for this band called Liar from Belgium. And the tour went really well. And so then we got invited back 2 years later on a big tour with Sick of It All and a bunch of other bands. It was a really killer tour. It was, between 500 and 2,000 people a night in that tour. And that was a really great tour for us to have our second exposure in Europe. And just things kind of took off from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. Now, when do we start? When you do a festival like Warped Tour, right? I'm not trying to dig too much into your pockets here of like what you make, for money. How does something like that work when you get paid? Do you get paid? Do they just go, hey, you got to come on this festival if you want? Do you have to pay to go on Warped Tour? Is there like some type of, how does this whole thing work? Like walk us through for people that have no idea.
It depends on where you are in your career. So in 2004, we did the Ozfest tour, and all the bands on the second stage that weren't part of the headlining tier. So the headliners were, I believe it was Slipknot, Lamb of God, and Hatebreed. And every band under that rotated, and every band had to buy on for a certain amount of money. And the bands don't have that kind of capital, but their record labels did. At the time, was this when CDs were more prevalent. There was more money in music sales. So a bunch of labels bought these bands on. So in 2004, we got bought on by Metal Blade Records to be on Ozfest. Fast forward 2 years, though, we were on 2006 Ozfest. We were in one of those non-rotating slots, like a headlining tier, and we got paid pretty well. Festivals generally pay the headliners and the upper echelon bands. You get paid more on those slots generally than you will if you do a club headlining tour. It's not always the case, but it is more often than not the case, at least for a band of our level. It doesn't exceed it by a ton, but it makes it where it makes sense for you to come over to do festivals and then do some off-day shows with you and just smaller clubs with more local acts instead of just going out and doing your own headlining package. So they give incentive for the bands to come and not do their own tour, but lend their name to the festival. And you kind of have to separate those two. So in the summers, you'll do these festival tours, and then the winter and late fall, early spring, you'll do your headliners.
So at this point in your career now, if you guys say, okay, we're going to do a 3-week tour, guys, right? We all agree, everything's all set. Do you call the Palladium and say, hey, we want to play on this date? And they say, okay, we'll pay you? Or do you have to pay? Like, I just don't understand how the whole thing gets set up like that. But let's talk about you at your point in your career now. How does something like that work?
We wouldn't pay to be on anything at this point in our career. And in early days, we would have. But only for something big like that. When I was in high school, we would have to sell my not this band, but my band in high school called Rind. We did a couple of shows where we had to sell tickets to play the show, and that's kind of standard practice for a young local band. You want to get on this gig? Okay, the opening band is to sell 100 tickets, and if you don't sell them, you have to pay for them. I wouldn't recommend that. If the band really wants to do something like that, then it's great. Make sure that the opportunity is worth it, because if you don't sell all those tickets, then it might not be that great of an experience for you.
Totally.
But sometimes it's great. Sometimes if it's a festival, it might make sense. For us, yeah, we wouldn't pay me anything now. So, but we have a booking agent and a manager, and they get together with the label, and they'll kind of plan an album cycle. If you're beyond the album cycle, like we currently are, any touring we do is strictly the booking agents will reach out to different promoters and be like, hey, Unearth is looking to do some work in this region at this time. Do you have any venues available? But before we actually reach out to the venues, you try to reach out to certain bands you might want to tour with. And so that's kind of how we do it.
Do you remember the first big act you shared a stage with or that you started to tour with? Like when you guys first started doing your thing and you're like, oh my gosh, we're playing with so-and-so.
So because this wasn't our first band, Buzz, the guitarist, he booked a tour package. So I had been in 2 bands that had regional success. And the band that was the majority of the band that is on Earth now, well, at the beginning, was a band called .04. And our bands played together a lot in the 97, 98 before Unearth formed. So we were already kind of veterans for the scene, at the regional scene at the time. So we knew enough to book a tour package for our first show to be one of the best exposures. We booked there's a touring package that week, a band called All Out War and a band called Buried Alive. And the singer of Buried Alive was the singer of the band Terror. So this band meant a lot. They still do mean a lot. They come back once in a while, but Terror is his main act. But it was a big show, 400 or 500 people. So that was a big deal for us at the time. So we actually self-booked the first show. just to make sure that we're in front of an audience. And then for the first like big time gig that we didn't do ourselves, I think we just playing Metal Fest. We played Metal Fest, I think 2000, and Meshuggah was the headliner.
Wow.
Let me just share with you right now. Rob and I saw Meshuggah.
Yeah.
I don't know, literally 20 years ago when they opened up for Tool.
Yeah, Tool was touring the Lateralus album, so it was like 2001.
And I didn't share with your with your wife yet. I didn't share with you, but I also do security at the Worcester Palladium now because I like to just go to shows. So I was just at the Meshuggah show the other day, just standing right in front, just catching bodies and stuff like that.
Nice.
So it was really, really, really cool. And that's when I was kind of standing there going, holy moly, like everybody here is singing these guys' words. Like that must just feel so awesome. They're all over the place. They've been around for a long time too. So just to have a bunch of just screaming people, looking like maniacs, but singing all of your songs, that just, I can't get over how much of an amazing feeling that must have on somebody.
It really is. Did you work the Tattoo the Earth Fest?
No, that's the one show I missed, and everybody was talking about it because I guess some guy like ripped his leg up pretty good or snapped it right in half or something. Everybody kept talking about that. Yeah, but
we were supposed to play that, and we already committed to a festival in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't. We played the night before the pre-party.
All right. Yeah. Well, apparently it was pretty cool.
Next year.
So let me ask you a question. Limp Bizkit. I love Limp Bizkit. Okay, I saw them in May. That's actually what made me decide I wanted to work at the Palladium because I ended up seeing them. The events leading up, they were supposed to be at the Songus Arena, right? Then like 3 days before, they switched to the Palladium. From your experience, does that usually sound like, we're not selling enough tickets at Songus where we should go to a smaller venue? Or do you think other things come into play that people don't know about?
There can always be something else that comes into play. That could have been a problem at the Songus, but it's the capacity at the Palladium is 2,400. I think Songus is 6,000. Maybe I'm just pulling that number out of my ass, but it would seem on the surface that they didn't sell enough tickets. But still, I mean, if it was packed to Palladium, that's still an amazing show. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can overshoot a venue, and we've done that before. We did a tour in 2006 where I still have gripes with past management and booking agent because we told them beforehand, hey, we're playing 3,000 cap rooms in this tour, and we're not a 3,000 cap room band yet. Let's play House of Blues with 1,500 cap. And management booking agent fought us at the time. Most of the shows are great. There's a couple shows where we had to take a reduction because of there's my dog. I'm sure you hear him. Brought him to the attic to my studio.
Oh, nice.
Just sniffing around crying. Yeah, long story short, that stuff does happen. You can have a disagreement in the people that you have working for you, and they might overshoot a room. So you have to pay attention to that as an artist as well. Like, hey man, like I don't know if I feel comfortable playing this size venue because we have never, sold that amount of tickets before. So why are you booking a whole tour like this? So that does happen, but maybe something else. I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of Limp Bizkit.
Of the biz. So you were friends with Dimebag Darrell, correct?
Yeah, for a brief amount of time, we were friends, and
Wow.
and Idol since '91, since I first heard Cowboys from Hell, and they quickly became my favorite band, and probably will forever be my favorite band. But we were lucky enough to tour with them, and it was March through May of 2004, and
Wow.
He treated us like he knew us for 20 plus years, and he was the coolest. I think still to this day, the coolest musician I ever met in my life.
Wow.
Are you happy to share the crappiest musician you've ever met that we would all know?
You know what? I don't know if it's the crappiest one. Usually, I've noticed that if someone's an asshole, then their career goes away kind of quick.
Like, are you confident you could beat up Scott Stapp from Creed if he was talking all that shit to you when he was doing it to everybody else?
I'm confident in my abilities, but I don't know Scott Stapp. Maybe he's a nice guy.
Maybe he's a nice guy. No, you're answering that.
What do you think of like all that music that came out in like 2000s, like Disturbed and Nickelback and I don't know, just all those bands that when we were 13, we thought that was like the
It was
most
the
badass
shit, bro.
shit. And now, like, you know, I'll play it with my girlfriend. She's like, that's like kind of emo, you know, like what'd you think of that surge of bands?
So like the new metal
Yeah.
surge. I mean, it wasn't for me, but it's definitely I'm in the minority because people really like it. And we toured with those bands. We did the Mayhem, we did Ozfest, and these bands headline. Like Godsmack headlined one. There's Mayhem 2011, Disturbed, System of a Down, great. Haven't played with Nickelback. My wife loves Nickelback.
Why do you think they get a bad rep?
Yeah, what they do?
What did they do? Their songs are good. You know, they're corny, but like they're good. But like,
I
what's
just
the
think
deal?
because it's corny, right? But they play it off so well. And Chad Kroeger he's brilliant because he laughs at that they're corny, but they sell out amphitheaters. So they're a massive band. Does anyone really dislike Nickelback? I mean, the song is pop rock, right?
Yeah.
So it's just poppy, catchy songs. So it might not be your favorite thing. It was like, all right, that's all, whatever. It's catchy. It's fine. You know, it's just art. You can't hate art. It's just what they're throwing out there.
If you're playing and you see like, I don't know, because like you guys are more like true metal, and you see like a Godsmack, are you kind of like these guys suck? I don't know, or is it just art? You know?
No, maybe when I was younger, but no. If they're up there gutting it out and playing, I mean they're playing what they want to, what they like, what they want to hear. It just wouldn't be what I'm trying to hear. And they might say the same about when I'm playing it. We actually had that instance in 2011. We did the Mayhem Fest tour all summers, 5-6 weeks, and Disturbed was on it. And at the time, Twitter was really like the go-to social media for musicians, anyways. And I was on it pretty actively at the time. And David Draymond, the singer of Disturbed, put out some negative tweet about heavy bands and the Cookie Monster style vocals. I forget exactly what it was, but I fired back, and a couple other singers on the tour fired back at him. And he actually manned up, and the next day he came and knocked on the bus's doors and came in and apologized for any insulting words he may have inadvertently given to these bands that he viewed as, I guess, Cookie Monster vocal styles.
Yeah.
I unfortunately was at catering, and I was given the information by my bandmates who were actually on the bus, and they said it was really cool. And that's the trouble with social media. Sometimes you might feel something and say it, and then you realize, oh shit, I just insulted people. I didn't mean to insult. I think that's maybe what happened with him.
Ooh,
That's right.
Sounds like the Cookie Monster to me.
Listen, Disturbed walked me through years of my life. They were right by my side.
It was we were the perfect age, like 13 years old when they were like peaking, you know. It's just like
I only wish at 13 I had heavy rock that was on the radio. Like I was at the junior high dances saying, hey, play Metallica, turn it up. And they would literally say, I had enough people that like metal in my junior high that they had to play it. There's enough requests, but the dude would turn it down to like 2. And put on like New Kids on the Block up to like 10. It's like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing? So it wasn't accepted at the time. And I remember us being teased by certain people for liking metal at a young age, but we didn't care. We had a great community. And I grew up in a town called Wakefield, Mass. There's a lot of kids at the time who loved metal. And there's a bunch of bands that came out of Wakefield, and a lot of musicians that still play today.
How is the scene now? The metal scene, has it changed over the years, or you still think it's going strong?
Yeah, I mean, I think metal is as strong, if not stronger than ever. If you look at the shows that, you know, if you follow the right bands on Instagram or YouTube, you'll see what metal is doing without the support of radio. But metal does have Sirius XM now. You have Liquid Metal, you have Ozzy's Boneyard, They're playing aggressive in Octane. They're playing aggressive bands, and so these bands are growing an audience through there, and also just through social media. And that's a major player. Is that we're like, I don't do personal socials, but I'm trying to learn daily how to improve the band socials. So we have a rep at Central Media that's teaching me how to use TikTok, and Unearth has a TikTok, and we don't have many followers, but it's starting to build more and more followers. So I'm starting to learn the tricks of the trade and how to actually do it. It's not that much different than Instagram, but the whole world is focusing on these socials, and that's how you get your brand out there. And it's a new level of entertainment. So you have to be out there and be part of it. So that's where the younger bands have more of a leg up, is that they've grown up with all these, you know, these newer mediums, and they're just more they're more what's the word I'm looking at, more skilled, it's more natural for them to fly into it. Whereas when we started, we barely had a website. We had a GeoCities site, and then it built up, you know, eventually a .com, but then we had MySpace forever. But every year it seems like something new is coming out. So you have to kind of keep up with what's the right medium to really focus on, the right platform, the right app. And that's just become a different thing to navigate.
Have you ever been beefing with your bandmates and had to play a show and it was like a really good show, but like you guys all just hated each other at the same time? Have you ever had that experience?
One really extreme one. Usually we don't at all, but we were on tour, and I remember it was 2011, and we had some drama going on. We had the album spot cycle was supposed to start with a band. We did Mayhem Fest, which is great, and then we're supposed to go into an Australian festival tour called the main tour was called Soundwave, but then they were doing an offshoot one. It was always in February, the Soundwave. They were doing an offshoot one in September, October. It was called Soundwave Revolution, I think it was called. And they had Aerosmith as a headliner. Right before the tour started, Aerosmith dropped, so they had no headliner. So the tour got canceled. And so we had Australia, Japan, and China all booked. And it was going to be a pretty good profit for the band. It was going to be a great time. It was going to take up about 5 weeks of our album release tour. And then everything fell apart except for Japan. So we went from a month to 3 shows.
Wow.
So that added stress, financial stress, album stress, because it wasn't getting promoted like we had intended. And then into this tour, this North American tour that performed pretty well, but it underperformed at the time for what everyone expected. And we had a management change. So there's all the stress. And we played Albuquerque. And Albuquerque is generally a place where we've had bad luck with just band dynamics, whatever reason it is. There's one venue called the Sunshine Theater has a lot of bad energy, and we found out later that I guess a girl was killed in the dressing room. So maybe that has something to do with it, if you believe in anything like that. Not by our end, it was different. Of course, it was a different tour. It was actually the guy that worked at the venue. But maybe that's the reason why there's such bad energy. But we got in a fight backstage, which we never do. And we were arguing, and one of our guitar player, Ken, our guitar player, he stood still the whole show and didn't move. And that's the opposite of what Ken does. Ken and Buzz run around like madmen. That's their show. You know, they're riffers, shredders, and they run around like crazy and do tricks and have fun. And he just stood still the whole time because we had an argument backstage. And so that was the only time I think that any band beef really spilled out on the stage.
Huh. Wow. Just still. Just
so we all took turns standing in front of him to try to make it seem less awkward. You know,
oh my God.
On that side of the stage. It was definitely awkward.
Wow. So I have a question, Spencer.
Sure.
is it much harder as a band now to get like signed? Like you kind of sound like you got sort of like what we dreamed of. You know, me and Spencer had a metal band.
I'm sure you've heard of it, Trevor.
Exile.
Yes, Exile.
We were pretty big in our middle school. But you know, the dream back then was like, could we get a record deal? You know, and it seems like you got to do that, and I find that so cool. But is it like nowadays it's like you can't just get it like that? Like you said, you gotta be a master of social media. You have to have like all these like marketing skills that like back in the day you guys just needed to, you know, record an EP and get lucky that someone who in power hears it.
I think sometimes if the music hits people a certain way, then it gets recognized and gets passed on to the right people. So if people hear a band like, oh, they're doing something cool, then it's going to find its way to someone that might want to put actual money behind it.
Let me ask you this. You go, you do your thing. Even now, you're on tour, feeling good, you're with the boys, living the rock star life. Now it's time to return home to good old Massachusetts, right? Well, first off, do you get a lot of rage texts from the old lady when you're on tour, or does she kind of leave you alone? Because I get rage texts from my wife even when I'm 20 minutes down the road from our house, right? The kids are this, the kids are that. Do you get those text messages? I've asked her.
We've had an animated history.
Yeah. All right. Now, do you still get those now, or like? Because now, I mean, listen, you're getting older now, right? So it's not
I think it's less.
Yeah.
I think we're settled into where we are in life.
Yeah.
Currently, she's an amazing mom, and we both enjoy being parents. That's. I think I can speak for her as well. That it's being a parent is both of our favorite things to be in life.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's great. You go on tour, now you're home, you're tired. You go from thousands of people singing your songs, all that stuff, and now you're in the living room in good old Massachusetts. Takes you a few days to adjust, huh?
Yes.
And then how do you feel when you're at home? Do you like this other life? Like, do you like the other part of life? Or if you had it your way, everything worked out according to plan, would you be touring 24/7 and living in a mansion somewhere and all that stuff?
I couldn't be away from the kids that much. I think the way we balance it now is the best I could probably do emotionally at this point in my life. Maybe when the kids are older, which I see a lot of bands that I grew up idolizing, bands like Testament. I loved them growing up, and in my late teens to mid 20s, they seemed to kind of go away for a while. They were still active, but they weren't full time like they were to the point where I was used to. Touring with Testament 2009, then I see that his son at the time I think was 19. Like that makes sense. Now Testament's all over the place. They are, you know, guys in their 50s touring full time. So I see what they did. That they built a career. They maintained kind of this pseudo full time appearance, but they were home enough to raise families. And then they went back after it again when the kids got older. And that's kind of the plan we're on right now. I'm not sure. There's a risk in taking that kind of step, to not being in everyone's face all the time, because the bands that really tour the most are the ones that get the most recognition and the better tour slots, the better pay, better record deals, so your career will be healthier. So maybe we'll reach a point where we need to make that decision. But for now, we were very happy where we're at. We're on a great label, Century Media Records. They treat us well. They give us a good budget to work with. One of the best producers out there right now. I think the best producer for our style of music, Will Putney. New record is written, it's recorded. That's going to be released in the spring. The artwork's being worked on right now. We should see it by the end of the week. So this record will be out. It's already done. Everything's good besides the art. And we're going to start an album cycle. So as long as we have the support group behind us, we have the booking agents, the North American one, we have the European one. Both of them also book worldwide, so whichever one gets the best offer for us. We have the worldwide record label on Central Media, and we have our manager, and they help kind of piece our career together while we kind of navigate being adults and parents, but still want to be looked at as a full-time band.
Dude, I'm so jealous of you.
I know, me too.
Aren't
It's
you
pretty
jealous? Like,
cool.
you don't understand. You are, if I was in 7th grade and I could literally say, this is how I want my life, it would be what you're up to right now. Everything's perfect.
I have a question.
It's not perfect. I mean, there's sacrifices you make. So,
It's perfect, Trevor.
It's perfect. So if you're on tour for weeks, right, and you're playing shows and you come home, do you go to concerts, or are you like, you know what, I'm good, I've been playing like too many of these, I just want to chill?
So when we're gone for 9 months a year, the last place I would want to be was another concert.
Yeah.
But with the pandemic and concerts being shut off, and just the fact that we tour less, even before the pandemic, we tour less. So I'm definitely more open to going to shows.
Mm-hmm.
I saw King Diamond at the Palladium. Went with Buzz and my friend Bud. So that was in 2019, and amazing. It was sold out show at Palladium, and King Diamond sounds as good as he's ever sounded. He was in his 60s. What a legend that guy is. But I'll go to gigs, and more so now than I did, 10, 15 years ago.
Do you get recognized when you're going out? Like if you're out and about in town in Massachusetts and stuff, how often does that happen?
Occasionally, more so I think maybe before. But it's funny because for years I was doing Uber as a side gig between tours, and that would happen occasionally where I get recognized.
Wow,
driving Uber. I'm like,
that's pretty crazy.
That's
Yeah, it sucks.
well, yeah, but
you gotta play it cool, right? Oh, just getting some side money,
I started doing it because a lot of dudes and bands recommended it. Like, all right, well, when I'm home from tour, all you do is flip on this app and drive whenever you want. So I'm still in the system. I'll still drive once in a while, even though now I have a desk job. I think the easiest way to make extra money is flip on an app and go drive a car for a minute.
So you have a desk job when you're home living the normal life, and then when it's time to go out and play, you live in the best of both worlds, right? When the opportunity is there where you get the band together and you can go out, make a little bit of dough, travel a little bit. You do that, but you're not going as hard as you used to because you're able to balance that family life stuff.
Yeah, I still feel like I could go as hard as I used to when we did this summer. And if things were presented to us in a certain way, if the record popped off, of course, we would go a certain level of touring. But if we're going to be this size band, and we kind of know our place, this is going to be our 8th record. We're happy where we're at. But if a certain song changes things, then maybe we'll tour more. But I really can't see being away from the kids much more than I am. Like I got to coach my son's t-ball team this past spring. My dad coached me my entire childhood growing up through Little League. So that stuff is important to me. It's instilled in me. My parents raised me a certain way where I want to be with my kids, to show them that love and kind of guide them through their early life.
Doesn't he look like a rock star, Rob?
He is.
When I was sitting there, I was at my son's orientation. So me and my wife are sitting there, and this guy walks in, and I'm like, that he's something. And my wife's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he's either like a magician or like a rock star. He's something. Cool. He's not a guy that like just listens to music. Like he does something. And then as time goes on, and then I met your wife and we were talking, I'm like, okay, now it's all making sense. I'm like, yeah, of course that dude's the lead singer of a metal band that's globally recognized. Of course.
I love that school, man. When our daughter Sonny was in school there, her teacher Shelly, she loves music, and her nephew's in a band that does some touring, and she encouraged me to come in and sing for the kids. So
no way.
Three straight years I came in with my acoustic guitar, and I would sing for the kids. And the first one I was actually really nervous because it was my first like folk show. Yeah, I played for fun by myself. I sang and play with the kids. I never had an audience for singing like that. And, I'm not yelling. I'm up there doing a clean vocal. I remember telling Shelly, who's now retired from GCS, is like, I'm nervous. Like, they're 4.
Yeah, 4 years
Don't
old.
be nervous.
They know where they
Yeah.
are.
I know.
Wow.
So funny. No,
So-
it's a great school. Go ahead, Rob.
I have a question. So you tour a lot overseas and then in America. Do you have a preference? Like, is it more fun to be in like Poland than down at the Palladium?
There's a certain thrill to being in places you don't get to go to often, for sure.
Mhm.
Playing a good show trumps everything, for sure, but you separate that from the travel. So this summer, one of the Santa experiences that was not on stage was we played in the south of France. We did a festival in France, and then about an hour from the festival were the beaches. So like, hey, let's go there before we drive to the next venue. So then we had a club show the next day. I actually think we had a day off. So we spent, I think, 6 hours in the south of France at a beach.
That sounds
And the
awesome.
water was probably 85 degrees. It was beautiful, spacious, just white sands. And then we had a couple pints on this beach restaurant and had little appetizers. And man, this is stuff that I wouldn't get to experience if it wasn't for this music. So stuff like that really kind of it really energizes you to want to tour different zones.
I just saw a video of you yelling at a bouncer at a concert to get out of the pit. Are you aware of that? Let me tell you
I
something.
just saw that too the other day. Yeah,
Yes.
it's funny that came out.
That got quite a few hits, and Robbie's screaming at this guy like in the middle of his vocals, right? He's like, "Security, get out of the pit! You're making it a bigger problem." And I will tell you, as a bouncer at the Worcester Palladium now, there is nothing more than I want is to just go in there and like do my
Rex.
thing, like hang out, you know. But I know it's not safe for me. It's not safe for anybody else because it's going to put everybody on edge. It's going to be a mess. But you yelled at security.
So the story behind that is we weren't aware there's a festival in Rhode Island, in Providence, that got booked. We headlined this festival, and we got there, and they told us it's a no moshing venue. This was, I think it was 2019. Like, what are you talking about? Moshing's been going on for decades, many decades. Like, we don't want the liability. Like, well, you're not going to stop people from moshing at this festival. Like, that's just literally 1980s thinking. You can't stop people from moshing at a metal hardcore show. It's just stupid. So there's a lot of people there. There's a big room, and humans are in the room, and you play aggressive music. The people know they're going to move to it, and the pit always polices itself. People know at this point in time, people know to pick each other up, respect each other. Any aggression is 99% of the time positive aggression. You're not intentionally trying to hurt anyone. So when you put someone in there that's trying to actively stop it, and they're being aggressive to stop it and hemming people up, they're now an antagonist, and they're causing issues. And these bouncers were basically beating up our fans, and I had to say something about it. And there was a shouting match. I yelled at them, and it didn't really get any better. And after the set, because I also tour managed the band most of the time, I remember being in the office with the owner of the venue, the promoter, and the head bouncer, and we had some really, really heavy words. I wouldn't back down. Like, look, you guys are such backwards thinking to not allow moshing. You created problems. You created fights. You caused people to get kicked out of the show because you didn't want moshing. And the owner of the venue said, "Well, I want to avoid a lawsuit for moshing." Like, moshing happens on every continent. Like, what makes your venue so fucking special that you can't have moshing at this 800 cap room? Like, I was basically like, fuck you. There's no excuse, zero excuse for you to have this rule for your venue. So I can see in the 80s with this thinking, but it's 2019 when this happened, and it's made no sense to me. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, your rules are stupid. You don't know anything about the music. Don't book these types of shows.
And what do they think?
Yeah.
A couple of guys are going to go in there and stop however many people from moshing, and it's physically impossible. I feel like,
Yeah, and so a couple big guys they're given a rule. So I don't want to have beef with these guys. They're doing their job. I have to say, stop beating up our fans. I know you're doing your job, and I think that was part of it too. Like was not on video. I think there was some of that the dialogue. Like, you're doing your job, I know, but stop doing your job. You're causing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these people are here to have fun. They know what to do. These are dudes, mostly dudes in the pit, 30 plus, who've been doing this since they were teenagers.
Yeah.
They're probably all friends. So they're moshing, they're dancing, they're circle pitting, singing along. They're here for a jovial time. If this bigger guy is coming up to them and putting them in a headlock or wrapping them up in some MMA move, their friends are going to get, amplified. And then there's going to be a brawl between security and the showgoers. So it's just unfair. It's like, man, just don't even book this type of music if you don't want this type of behavior. Because generally, there's not any problem with the pit.
Yeah,
that is. It's very strange.
I think when you go in a mosh pit, you're like signing an invisible waiver to be like, yeah, like I might get banged up a little bit, but I'm not gonna like sue the Palladium because I went in a mosh pit.
Yeah, you can stay out of it.
Yeah, it's a choice to go in there, and most of the time, like you said, like me and Spencer have been in, and just shoving people around, and there's no like
they mosh at Pearl
people
Jam shows, man. Like, I don't know, like it's not like a new thing. That's why it was so confusing. Like, what do you moshing?
Am I still muted? Am I good?
No, you're good now. I had a question going back a little bit.
Sure,
like,
Rob.
When you're talking about when you sign a record deal, right? Because I'm just so curious about all this stuff and very jealous. Is it like they're like, we'll give you X amount of dollars for the year, or is it like you need to put out this many albums and do this many? Is it like an itemized list of what you need to do to get paid, or do they just like pay you? And you don't have to say how much or whatever.
Every contract is different, and it's kind of catered to what the artist really wants. So usually an artist generally just wants their music to be, distroed as far as possible with as much, promotion behind it. So that's the first goal. So you get that, worldwide, be available online and stores everywhere, whatever. We're going to advertise it here, and here. As you grow as an artist, or if you have a lot of pull in your first contract, then you can start to ask for other things. Ask for X amount of dollars, ask for a certain amount for the budget for videos or for extra promotion. That's just kind of how it goes. Like, so the more chips you have, in your favor, the more you can get out of the label. Usually it's not about the money or your pocket. It's more about promote this product as much as possible, so we have the best chance at making a living on tour and with selling merchandise online. Because essentially your income is from touring and from merchandising, and that's the two main incomes you get from a band. Royalties are not what they were in the 70s and 80s, just because the physical sales aren't what they used to be. Streaming doesn't pay nearly what physical sales did. Hopefully it catches up one day, and there's a better. Ultimately, that's going to bring more production to shows. So right now you see the biggest acts having big production, whereas in the 70s and 80s you might have seen mid-tier acts have more production because they just had more money. They had tour support, but that's not a reality for a lot of bands these days.
Are you guys seeing any monetization money? I know you said streaming doesn't really pay that much, but like I've seen on YouTube, you got like a few million views on some of your on some of your videos and stuff.
So anything that we do online that is a recording will have to go to recoup any expenses that we accrued from the record label. So that's a video, or let's say the Ozfest we got bought on in 2004. That's still the debt with Metal Blade Records. Stuff like that, record budgets. 2006, we did a record. We lived in Seattle for 7 weeks. So that was a huge budget. We had 2 rooms at a Days Inn for 7 weeks. We had Studio X in Seattle. There was like Soundgarden, Nirvana recorded. So it was a really high price studio with Terry Date, who did the Pantera records. So that was a really high price tag record. So certain things that may never get recouped on paper, but they catapulted the band to a point where we're, a band that's going to be here until maybe we don't want to do it anymore. Hopefully, that's the goal.
So let's talk about that. We can kind of wrap things up with this. Where is Unearth now, and where do you see Unearth in the near future? Tell us where we can find your stuff. I know you mentioned you got a new album coming out, so give us all that stuff.
So you can find Unearth on all the socials and online. Everything is Unearth Official. So our .com is Unearth Official, and whatever social media you use, it's all Unearth Official. You find all of our info there. We just recorded what I feel it's every record, because you get so emotionally invested, is that every record is your best record. But we did a lot of things in this new record that we really pushed the envelope musically and with our own instruments. So just be a more dynamic band. So there's a lot going on this record that we're very excited for people to hear. And that record comes out in the spring. We don't have a release date yet, but I'll say anywhere between March and May it's going to come out, because the record's done. We're just waiting on art and the full setup from the record label. And we're so proud of the record that we really want to tour on it heavily, at least heavily for this point of our career, and get as many ears on it as possible, and also trying to dip into more of a visual aspect for the band, and have more videos, more social media, shorts here and there, and just try to give more of a visual representation of what the music is about, what the lyrics are about, and just promote the band that way as well.
I love it. In another way, of course, if you're interested, which I can't imagine you wouldn't be, an opportunity for you is Reality Tonic, which is myself and Rob, would be more than happy to attend one of your shows in Europe and cover the event. Of course, all expenses paid by the label. And we will go there, and we would love to cover all of the content there. And I think that'd be a great opportunity for all of us. What are your thoughts?
Let's do it.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here, Reality Tonic World. We will be going to Norway.
We're going on tour.
We are finally planning, hopefully, to go back to Europe in the spring. I think in March, as we're talking about it. So it'll be a tour bus tour too. So you guys come over.
Can you imagine, Rob? I wouldn't come back the same. I'd be so cocky.
I'd feel like I had the experience, that we wanted when we were 13.
Well, I would start talking like, I went on tour. I did this. I did that.
I was on tour in Europe.
Yeah. No other details.
Being on the road, stuff.
So, Trevor, what we like to do with all of our guests, what we would like to do is you seem like a guy, you seem like a manly man, you seem like an alpha male, like myself. There is a beta on the screen. We can narrow down who that is, but that's neither here nor there. My question for you is, Trevor, do you like grilling?
Grilling? I love grilling.
Yeah? You like spices too, right? You want to mix it up a little bit? Like spatulas, some seasonings, maybe an apron. You want an apron. You want some t-shirt. You like grilling apparel, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, of course.
Trevor, what if I told you there's a website where you can go and find all of those things? It's pretty legit, right?
Yeah. I'm all in.
Now, what if I told you there's a website where you can go and you can enter promo code Reality Tonic at checkout and save yourself 10% off? Does that sound good?
Sounds great. 10%.
All right. So what I want you to do, and all of your fans, right? This is globally. We can do this. You go on www.grillyourassoff.com. You pick all the stuff you want. You type in promo code Reality Tonic. You get yourself 10%. The good thing about this, Trevor, is you can continuously do this, right? This isn't like a once in a lifetime deal. You can go, holy moly, I forgot I needed to get a sweatshirt for my little guy, right? Go back on there, get yourself another 10%. No sweat. All right?
Grillyourassoff.com. I like it.
Thank you. I like it. I like it.
He likes it a lot.
All right, folks, we're going to sign off.
Wake up to reality, to reality.